I recognize the honourable leader of the NDP.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we found out yesterday from CMHC that 25% of Nova Scotian renters are in core housing need. That's well above the national average. And the definition of core housing need is those who live in housing that is unaffordable, inadequate, or unsuitable and couldn't find alternative suitable and adequate housing in their community. Young people, seniors, working people, healthcare workers, these people need stable housing. And we do need to increase supply to meet this need. And in this case, we need truly affordable, non-market housing supply. Will the Premier commit to matching the number of Nova Scotians in core housing need with the number of non-market, truly affordable housing starts?
I ask that all questions are directed through the chair to the member opposite. I recognize the honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We've made incredible investments in housing across the spectrum. Student housing at NSCC campuses, working with some of the universities. Affordable housing, public housing, the first investments in public housing in this province in decades, Madam Speaker. We will continue to bring down barriers to the construction of new housing. And, Madam Speaker, the plan is working. There are more housing starts. Housing starts are up, and we're moving towards 40,000 new units in this province under a housing plan by 2028. We'll continue to move forward on that plan, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable leader of the NDP.
Thank you. We've heard announcements, but we haven't actually seen any of that public housing. Yesterday, an organization representing many of Canada's biggest landlords said, quote, "We're not tasked with building deeply affordable or social housing. We can't be there. We're in business. Let's draw a line between those two." Developers don't want this responsibility, but nonprofit providers do. The YWCA, with $2.9 million from this government, has, in the space of under a year, housed over 30 families in the Mount Hope area. Meanwhile, the original plan from this government, $22 million to a private sector developer, resulted in zero housing in over a year, and the eventual return of the funds. Will the Premier commit to giving the remaining $19 million to non-market providers so that they can quickly build the housing we need?
I recognize the honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for recognizing some of the investments that we're making in affordable housing and in public housing. And again, I would say the first investments in public housing in decades. We know that the prior government wasn't interested in supporting housing, investing in housing. We know that the prior NDP government sat on, literally, Madam Speaker, tens of millions of dollars from the federal government to invest in housing. If the NDP would have invested those tens of millions of dollars in housing instead of sitting on them, maybe we'd be having a different situation with housing in this province today. But yes, the member is seeing announcements. Yes, the member is seeing shovels in the ground. And yes, as the member has quite rightly said, we're seeing people moving into housing as well in just a couple of short years.
I recognize the honourable leader of the NDP.
Thank you. Even this government acknowledges that trickle-down housing won't solve the problem. In the 2023 Needs Assessment Report, quote, "Most of this report focuses on market housing. However, these effects alone are insufficient to guarantee affordable housing for everyone in need. Even a well-functioning market will not be able to adequately address the needs of individuals or households earning lower incomes." The vacancy rate when the NDP was in government was at least quadruple of where we are now. We are in a crisis, and yet we hear this government giving more and more money to private sector developers for social housing who don't want it. Will this Premier finally acknowledge that for this government to address the housing crisis, they need to build and incentivize housing that people can actually afford?
Order. I recognize the honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this government is investing in housing, record investments in affordable housing, record investments in public housing. We are removing barriers for the construction of new homes. We want housing built. The solution to the housing crisis is more housing across the spectrum: student housing, public housing, affordable housing, and even high-end condos. It involves housing across the entire spectrum. And we're trying to strike that balance, and we're seeing that balance with the changes we're making on the rent cap, with we're changing the relationship, the opportunities for tenants and landlords. But we're doing all that, and we're still seeing cranes and construction, because as a government, it's our responsibility to find the balance, and we're finding it, Madam Speaker.